by reviewing Northeast region of our states.
Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware.
Right, now, on your next quiz will be the Southeast regions. We took away the one with the words, turned it around so you can't see it.
West Virginia, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Mississippi, Georgia.
You gotta pay attention. I was just seeing what you would do. Georgia,
Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana.
I did it backwards, just like I did this one backwards, I did this one backwards. This is Arkansas, Louisiana. You have to think Louisiana, Arkansas, but if I'm pointing to this one's Arkansas, that one's Louisiana.
Florida,
Alright, so I did trick you guys up.
Kentucky,
I'm
Tennessee.
gonna try to go out of order, okay? So just remember, yes, I do usually go Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, but if I point to this one, that is Georgia, then Alabama, then Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, Tennessee, Kentucky, so that would be Kentucky, Tennessee. Alright, if you can learn this one, see how it has this little skinny thing? It looks like almost like a pocket though, doesn't it? Think about the pocket on your pants, on the front of your pants. Have you ever seen the pocket on the inside?
Yeah.
When your pants are turned inside, isn't that sort of look like a pocket?
Yeah.
Alright, so West Virginia is the one that looks sort of like a pocket. So West Virginia, Virginia, then North Carolina, South Carolina. And yes, I do use to go Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, but you don't know where they're gonna put the letter, right? So since you don't know where they're gonna put the letter, you need to say Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, so you can figure out which one they are telling you to know. Or here, Louisiana, Arkansas, right? So you know which one are they pointing at. Alright, we'll keep drilling those, but let's start with John Adams on page 136. Right? Choosing a career. I want to be a farmer, just like my father, John Adams, thought while he was in school. It is not fair that my brothers get to stay at home and have fun on the farm while I am stuck here in this desk. John was daydreaming again, thinking of how much fun he was missing at home. John was the oldest child in his family. When he was young, his favorite things to do were to hunt and work on his family's farm. Top of the next page. John's father hoped he would one day be a minister. Even though John would have rather been at home than at school, he worked hard and became a fine student. As a teenager, John became a student at Harvard University. As graduation drew near, he wondered what job he would do now. A doctor? No, he did not want to do that. A preacher? No. A few weeks before graduation, he was offered a teaching job. Yes, he thought, I will be a teacher. After 1 year, John Adams found out that teaching was not what he wanted to do. He enjoyed listening to trials in court in his spare time. What he really wanted to do was become a lawyer. He taught for 2 more years so that he could pay for law school. Mr. Adams was very busy working a full-time job and studying as an apprentice to a local lawyer. Even his weekends were filled with work, as he often studied and took tests. All right, so during this section, we're going to learn about the 3 branches of government. So right there, you see the 3 branches of government are legislative, executive, and judicial. Those are big words, but you need to pay attention to them because you will be expected to know them. What are they again? Legislative, executive, and judicial. All right, John Adams, the first vice president and the second president of the United States. So when George Washington was president, he was the vice president, and then he became the second president. Boston Massacre, an event in which British soldiers mistakenly fired into a crowd. So that means they would have been killing just regular people, not soldiers. John Quincy Adams, John Adams' son, who would become the 6th president of the United States. So John Adams, 2nd president, and his son, John Quincy Adams, became the 6th president. Turn the page. Moving to Boston. John Adams became a lawyer in 1758, and he did much of his business in the town of Boston, Massachusetts. He met and married his wife Abigail and soon moved his family from their small town to Boston to be closer to his work. He started his law practice with only simple cases which made little money, but his business improved, and he soon found himself taking much more important cases. While John Adams and his family were in Boston, the British began to cause trouble among the colonies. The colonists were upset over taxes and unfair laws. The Stamp Act, which we've heard about before, made the colonists angry because they had to pay taxes on all forms of legal papers. A group of colonists began mocking British soldiers, yelling and throwing snowballs, when one of the British thought he heard the order to fire. He began to shoot into the crowd. This terrible event became known as the Boston Massacre. John Adams was the lawyer chosen to defend the British soldiers charged in the Boston Massacre. Even though his job was difficult, he did what was right. It was Mr. Adams' most important case. So what was Mr. Adams' most important case? Boston Massacre. What was Mr. Adams' most important case?
Boston Massacre.
All right, let's talk about these important places. New York City, New York, the first capital of the United States. Is it our capital today? No, Washington, D.C. is. But what was the first capital of the United States?
New York City, New York.
And Washington, D.C. was not even the second one. All right, then Philadelphia, Pennsylvania,
The second capital of the United States.
So what was the first capital of the United States?
New York City, New York.
What was the second capital of the United States?
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
And what is the third capital of the United States?
Washington, D.C.
And that is what it is today. Okay, but it started out in New York City, New York, then it was moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and now today the current capital is Washington, D.C. And that's what it says next. Washington, D.C., the current capital of the United States. Top of the next page, serving his country. John Adams was selected by the Massachusetts Assembly to be one of the delegates to attend the First Continental Congress in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in which the colonies discussed forming their own country apart from England. Mr. Adams' friend John Hancock was president of the Second Continental Congress. Remember that at this meeting, the colonists chose to fight against England for their freedom. This group chose George Washington to be the commander-in-chief of the American Army. That was at the Second Continental Congress. John Adams believed a government should not be controlled by a king or queen as it was in England. He wanted the people to have a say in decisions that were made. Mr. Adams said that the government should have 3 separate parts or branches that work together. They should be legislative, executive, and judicial. Many of his ideas were used when forming the government of the United States of America. On July 2nd, when the states voted to become united, John Adams declared in a letter to his wife, "This day ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with songs, games, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of the continent to the other, from this time forward forevermore." Since July 4th was the day the Declaration of Independence was approved, it was chosen as the birthday of the United States, not July 2nd, like he suggested. Stop and think. John Adams told his wife that our nation's independence should be celebrated each year. How does your family or your town celebrate Independence Day? And we're not going to take the time to talk about that right now. All right? But you guys know you usually go to fireworks and have cookouts and things like that. All right. That's where we're supposed to stop. We'll start again on page 140 next time we read.